Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello and welcome to this video. Today I am taking a kind of a retrospective, nostalgic kind of view over my generation, Generation X. This video is prompted by the number of video shorts and reels and stuff I've seen done by other Gen Xers. They're very good. I really enjoy them. And if I remember, I'll throw some links in the description below to these people, to these other content generators. Generation X. Basically, depending on who you look at, who you go by, Generation X is basically 1964 through 1980. And the generation that I'm a part of, we were feral, and we did things pretty much by our own rules because we were so feral. I grew up in a little town called Carpus Cove, which is bordered by a military base called Fort Hood. Or it was when I was growing up. I think they're in the process of changing the name of Fort Hood to something else, but it is what it is. That was my backyard. That was my playground. Up until the events of September 11th, 2001, Fort Hood was what they call an open base, which simply meant is you called into what they called area control. You found out if you could go in a particular area, whether or not they got troops in there, training, or what have you. And if they didn't, you were granted access. Fort Hood was broken down into different training areas, and they're all numbered. And basically, if there wasn't any training going on, you could access it. Me and a childhood friend of mine, who I'm still good friends with, that was our playground. That's where we spent most of our free time. That, and before we were old enough to get a driver's license and drive, we would do things like get on our bikes and ride to Lampasas, which was 17 miles one way, and or Killeen, which was 18-20 miles the other way, down Highway 190. That's just what we did. I don't think we ever got in any major serious trouble. We're still alive, still in one piece. But what we did was by extremely dangerous by today's standards, and it's just one of those things. Grew up on comic books, science fiction, not a lot of TV. Did the standard cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon thing, did that. But we spent most of our time outside because we didn't want to be home, because if we were home, we had chores to do. We had things that our parents would make sure we didn't have idle hands, because, well, idle hands are the devil's tool, or which was the most common thing that our parents would quote. Coffee. Now, it should be pointed out that when the millennials came along, a lot of people, and I to a certain degree when I was much younger than I am now, kind of trashed on millennials. But now that I'm married to a millennial, I can honestly say they are pretty much just as feral as we were. They were a different type of feral, where we were analog, getting dirty, getting dirt under our nails and mud in our hair, and doing things, well, we probably shouldn't have been doing. Millennials are digitally feral. My wife probably knows more about computers and digital technology than I could probably ever learn, just simply because she is that feral. Simply because the millennials don't go out and play and do the crazy things that we did in the analog world. They grew up in a digital world. So they do the same things, but they do it digitally. If you look at all the people that have been apprehended by law enforcement for doing stuff, for posting images and pictures of stupid things on the social media, that tells you anecdotally, and this is not analog, this is anecdotal from my own personal life experience. So there is room for people going, no, I didn't experience that as a Gen X, or I didn't experience that as a millennial, whatever. Like I said, this is anecdotal. It's more nuanced. Because I'm going into my personal life and things that I did as a child. So, with that being said, let's continue. The feralness of millennials is not given the credit that it should be given, simply because millennials didn't go outside. They didn't go where we spent hours outside. They spent hours on the computer. And throughout my marriage, I have had to figure out that there are some overlaps. Simply to trash a generation simply because it's not yours is wrong. Now, there are people within, say, the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, what have you, that are exceptions that prove the rule. Depending on how you grew up, your socioeconomic class, and what have you. But those are nuanced experiences. Generally speaking, we as a Generation X, were feral. We ran the streets, we ran the countryside, we played, we drank out of garden hoses. It wasn't uncommon where I grew up, and when I grew up, if you were 20 blocks away from your house or whatever, and you were thirsty, to go up into some stranger's yard, turn the water hose on, get you a drink, and turn the water hose off, and go. No one got upset by it. It was just what kids did then. Last time I went and visited my old hometown, there are places that were wilderness when I was growing up that me and a friend of mine walked all over. We explored it, we climbed the trees that are now part of the city. There's roads and houses and subdivisions and all that. Is this a bad thing? Don't know. Is it a good thing? Don't know. It's a thing. It happened. The town grew. And as the town grew, it incorporated more of this land. They bought a lot of land off the military base to expand along Highway 190. Though it is kind of, I don't want to say disheartening or disappointing or anything, to see all the area where I used to play and run and jump covered by asphalt and concrete and houses. It's just part of the way society. In fact, where I live now is going through an expansion period, which is kind of, I don't want to say upset me, but that part of me that is a bit feral and a bit outside of the rules kind of doesn't like it. Well, on the other hand, there is a part of me that's like, well, yeah, this town needs to grow, because if it didn't, it would stagnate and die. And that's just part of why some towns fold up. They refuse to grow and develop. They just kind of stagnate and die. And the fact that the town I currently, well, I don't actually live in town anymore, I live out in the country, but the town itself, over the course of the last 30 years of the 20th century, became dependent on the Texas Department of Corrections and Sam Houston State University. Now that other manufacturing and businesses, industrialization is trying to move in, the people in the older people in town don't want to change. They don't want, they've grown comfortable. Now the younger people coming up are pushing for change. They're pushing this change, which is a good thing. It's just hope they do it with the environment and population and stuff like that in mind. Access to different things around town. And one of the things I want to address too is, as free and as carefree as we were as children in Generation X growing up, a lot of us, especially me and the kids I grew up with, we were, not only were we Gen X, we were Cold War babies. Things like Putin rattling, talking about using nuclear warfare and stuff doesn't generally bother us. We grew up with that. We grew up in a world in which we could have destroyed ourselves at any given moment, any given time, but we didn't. That is some of the trauma we grew up with. We grew up with that in the back of our mind all the time. And with that in the back of our mind all the time, we decided to go and have fun. Enjoy things, enjoy life. It is one of those things that we just did. The fact that the Soviet Union at the time was the bad guy, everything was geared around that. So in modern Russia, and it's not the Soviet Union anymore, which is, modern Russia is basically an oligarchy. It's an oligarchy trying to pass itself off as a capitalist state. They're not. They're an oligarchy, and which means very few have wealth, very few have means, and I hate to say it, but I think that America might be heading that way. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. But the the world as it is right now is not near as scary as it was when we were kids, when Gen X was kids, I should say. But we put that out of our mind. We just kind of rolled with the punches. The absence in our childhood of the internet, social media, and stuff made us a little bit more polite, I think. We would do and say things because we knew that the ability to hide from what we said or what we do was not as easy as it is today. I can make a rude post on somebody's social media that lives 8 states away or, 8 countries away. There's no real consequences. Whereas making the same comment or the same gesture or something when we were growing up would turn into an ass whipping. Somebody was going to get their ass whooped. So I tend, most of the people that I know that are of my age tend to be a little bit more polite, tend to be a little bit more forgiving, simply because we grew up under the adage of fuck around, find out. That was basically the whole premise to us being the way we are, being polite, being understanding of what other people were saying and doing. But I think that given time, that we will, as a species, evolve. Hopefully, as the baby boomers die out, as the baby boomers retire, and what have you, and we move as a generation into these positions of power, that you're going to have changes that are going to make the older generations feel uncomfortable. It's going to probably make the younger generations feel uncomfortable because we are that segue from the conservative, overly patriotic, sycophantic following of the American dream to the millennials who are looking at things more globally than we are. We are that transition period. We are that transition. So that's what I think we are going to then, as we die off and relinquish power to the millennials, that the millennials are going to further progress living lifestyle. It's already apparent with certain political organizations wanting to raise the voting age to 25. Tells you that there are people that are afraid of change. They're afraid of evolution, afraid of something that is not in their comfort zone, which is something I pray like hell I never fall into. I like new things. I like experiencing things. I mean, hell, I've got all these Funko Pops behind me, and those are a product of early 21st century. So yeah, I do like new things, but I also have a nostalgic, or almost romanticized view of the way I grew up, the things that I had growing up. For instance, I grew up on a diet of comic books, science fiction writings, everything from Grant Morrison, Frank Miller, um, Hunter S. Thompson, Robert A. Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Frank Herbert, Terence McKenna, and Dr. Albert Hoffman. That's the kind of stuff I grew up reading. Though I have yet to understand why so many Gen X parents were helicopter parents. That baffles me. And I think a lot of the reason why it baffles me is I chose not to have kids. So I don't know what all entails to accurately or even give any kind of hypothesis to why they turned out like that, because I didn't have kids. So if somebody out there is Gen X that has kids, wants to enlighten me, do so in the comments. Just don't be mean about it. Don't use a bunch of, profanities and stupid illusions and stuff like that. But as free and as feral as we were, and we are to a certain degree to this day. In Texas, right now, it is over 100 degrees, which limits what I can do outside because I'm not 15 anymore. Contrary to what my brain tries to tell my body. I still enjoy hiking, going out in the wilderness, going out in the state parks, national forests, and stuff like that. Spend out when the weather is conducive to it in the fall and the spring, early summer. I spend a lot of time outdoors doing that. Hiking and just climbing on rocks and stuff, kind of reliving my childhood. So yeah, it's one of those things. Gen X, I think, is, and I don't mean to take away anything from the people that do the shorts and the reels, because I really like them, I really enjoy them, but I think Gen X is a lot more nuanced than a lot of people think. I mean, for instance, the entertainment we grew up on, the literature we grew up on, were all produced by boomers, all baby boomers. I mean, mind you, a lot of these baby boomers were not your standard issue baby boomers. People like Jack Kerouac, Hunter S. Thompson, and people like that were not the norm. They're kind of the people we looked up to, the people that we found inspiration in, because they purported in their books and their novels, nonfiction, fiction, what have you, of a life outside of the conformity of every day. And we as a generation speaking generally and broadly, we embraced that. We embraced this wild and crazy thing. In fact, I was in the 4th grade the first time I ever read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. And I read that book and went, well, it worked for him, which set me on a semi-self-destructive path through a lot of my teenage years and into my 20s. But that's what we did. We embraced this wild, out of the ordinary, fighting the establishment. Then when we became the establishment, I don't think a lot of Gen Xers were prepared to become the establishment. I do agree with the fact that Gen Xers live in a perpetual state of adolescence. We do. Because we had to grow up so fast as children. Now that we're adults, we've decided now, in our 40s and our 50s and so on, that screw it, we're going to enjoy life. We're going to have the fun and do the childish things that we didn't have opportunity to do at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And I think that's kind of a plus. I think that is what's helping a lot of Gen X be able to communicate and get along better with both the boomers and the millennials, is because we're that transitional generation. We started life analog, and in our early to mid 20s we became digital. It's just one of those things that we did. It's how we ran our lives, how we enjoyed our lives. And we still do. For the most part, I have met Gen Xers that are more millennial, and I've met Gen Xers that are more boomer. It's good. It's all good because it shows that transition. Your early 64, 65, 66, even in the 67 kids, your OG or your starter for Generation X are more boomer. They have a lot more boomer in them than, say, kids born from like 68 to about 77, 78, right in there. 77, 78, 79, and 80, you've got this mixture of Gen X and millennial. Some people call them zillennials. I don't particularly care for that term, but that's just me. And if it sticks, it sticks. You know, it is what it is. And I'm not going to get too upset by it. I understand. I just wonder if there's a word for people that boomer Gen X mixture. I don't know. I haven't come across it. If there is, somebody put it down in the comments. I like learning new things. I like new experiences. It is a wildly adventure. I mean, I treat pretty much everything as an adventure. My wife does not. My wife is very organized, plans things out, has an itinerary, schedule, everything. Me, can't do it. I've really tried to do planning and stuff like that, but my very nature, I'm just way too spontaneous. And that's just kind of crazy that somebody as spontaneous and impulsive as me, who's married to somebody who's dedicated and efficient and organized. In fact, my computer desk is arranged by piles. I have piles, my drinks, I have piles for ink pens, I have piles for other things. I use a pile filing system. I put stuff in piles. My wife has a place in her computer room for everything. It's beautiful. It's organized. So she goes, go to this shelf, open this drawer. The thing you're looking for is, and it is. It's wonderful. It's great. I wished I could do it, but I can't. My personality, my ability to organize is not the greatest. However, on the flip side, I lose nothing. Or I shouldn't say that. I don't very often lose things. I know what pile it's in, generally speaking. Whereas my wife knows exactly where everything in her room is, where it goes, how it fits. But it is what it is. Yes, for those who are wondering, my wife is significantly younger than I am, and which I am closer in age to my in-laws than I am to my wife and my sister-in-law. Put it that way. So the fact that we get along and we do things and we have fun. Yes, we had a period of adjustment about 3 to 5 years into our marriage where I had to adjust to some of her millennial ways and she had to adjust to some of my Gen X ways. That did cause some strife. It did cause some interesting discussions, but we worked it out. We came to a mutual thing. We came to mutual understanding on certain areas. One of my biggest faults is I will wake up and decide I want to do something, or I'll be awake and watching TV and see something on TV or on the computer and go, hey, I'm going to go do that now. And a lot of it defies logic. So that is what it is. But having the experience of being married to a millennial, it's opened my eyes to a lot of the things that millennials get crapped on for. It's really not their fault. They simply figured out a better, more efficient way to do things, which upsets the establishment. It upsets the status quo. I have heard many times that millennials are to blame for the death of brick and mortar stores. They're not. It's just brick and mortar stores committed suicide is what they did. A lot of the brick and mortar stores that have survived, i.e. Target, Walmart, what have you, is because they adapted. They saw the writing on the wall. They saw what Amazon was doing. They saw what other online places were doing and realized for them to compete, they had to evolve their business model, which is a good thing because there's a lot of things that needed to go. This idea of a town having one store for groceries, one store for appliances and stuff like that, when why go out and spend half the day trying to gather up things you need when you can sit down online, punch a few buttons, and have it all ordered, and you don't have to leave the house. Or when you do leave the house, you can go do things you want to do. It's the evolution of business. And the places that failed to adapt, the places that failed to adjust to this new economy went under. It's not the millennials' fault. It's evolution. The weak and the sick die off, and the strong continue forward. It is what it is. And to sit here and blame a generation is stupid. It is. It's extremely stupid. So I will probably do more of these type rambling Gen X videos in the future, just because one video to cover it all would be way, way too long. So, along with the Rabbits podcast stuff and this type of stuff, my Tuesday or Thursday, depending on how my week's going, uploads. And I've been able to try to work it out where I get the uploads on the Rabbits podcast stuff up on Sundays, and I try to do one, maybe 2 videos a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So the Tuesdays and Thursdays don't always happen because life. I'm still out doing things and going on adventures and having fun. So, until next time, peace.